Hello, can you hear me? Hello, my name is Faisal Athar, and I am an assistant lecturer in VR for now. And in my part time, I kind of like develop my own games, and at times I like to do animation. I remember I do kind of like I mostly do animations before. So today I'm gonna share with you an animation I did, which is a running animation cycle. And I'm going to share with you how I did this. So you can see here, this particular animation has been sped up because I worked on this kind of like last week, if I'm not mistaken, and it took me about 2 days, two days I think, to finish up this particular running animation. I did an idle animation before, and after this I did an attack animation combo, which I'm going to share with you soon. But for now, I'm gonna kind of like show you how I did this in a speed up kind of environment. So we're gonna start at the very beginning. So at the very start, I do I just get the pose first for obvious reasons. Now the first pose is usually what for me, I do it at my pose is not at the very when you start running. I usually do it in the middle of the running, and usually if you can see here, this is basically the point where just before he touches the floor. Okay, so I usually do this. Why? Because for some reason it's kind of like easier to loop. It's easier to loop for me when I do it in mid-air, just before it reaches at the very end. I like this particular pose. It's a lot easier for me. So you got the legs stretched out as far as it can, and then the leg behind is kind of like dangling at the very end. So, and then my hands is going to be, in this case, my hands are not swinging. So my hands are kind of like standing by with one hand, and then stand by with the sword. Because this game is going to be a hack and slash game. It's kind of like Dynasty Warriors and stuff, the Muso genre. I'm kind of a fan of that. So I got the pose first. So you got the first pose in this particular pose. The right leg is on the front, left leg on the back, and then alternatively your left hand is on the front, right hand on the back. But we're not swinging the hand, as you can see, because it's holding the sword and stuff. So you want to make sure that the pose looks right from all angles. So make sure that you always check with all of the angles as well. And remember to save your file. So now I think I'm kind of, at this point, I'm kind of redoing a bit the animation, and I want to check for the other leg as well. So when you got the first pose, which is the first right leg and then the left leg like that, you want to jump into the third pose, not the second pose, which is basically first you are just barely touching the floor, and then you obviously stepped, and then you follow through, and then you're going to rotate like that. But I usually skip that part, so you're going to start with the left leg directly. So you want to first try with one leg just before it reaches its destination, and then you want to try to do the other leg just before he reaches the destination. So why I do this is because I wanna see jatuh lagi. I want to see the other leg with the previous pose, as you can see here, because it's a lot easier when you have the other pose just like that, because it's a lot easier. It's because the first pose is already there, and then you just kind of like you can just kind of like copy that particular animation pose where the foot placement and where's the other foot placement as well. So it's easier to follow when you put it like that. So you skip the in between. So at this point, when you animate it, obviously it's going to look messed up, going to look kind of weird. Fazil. So when you have that, when you have those two poses, just nice. Whoop. I need that to cover up my things. Sorry, I got my cat back there. So when you got that, then you work on the in-betweens. You're going to work on the in-betweens. So, and notice that I focus on the jump. That's basically you want to move the hip as well, so up and down, because you are running. So your hip does not stay in one place. You want to have that slight motion of up and down. That's not too much like you're jumping and whatnot, but you want to just barely, you want to notice that there is up and down movement, but not that in your face. So you want to make sure that you have that up and down, and then you follow through with the legs placement. Make sure you have that. I have it down there as just a box because I want to see the floor, so you can benchmark where your foot is supposed to be, right? So when you have that, then it's a lot easier when you kind of like put your feet so it looks more natural when it actually hits the ground and it follows through, go to the back. And then the other leg is just kind of like going to step over. So you want to make sure that it has some space. So now when you just transition, it kind of look weird because we're trying to work on the in-between. So we're just focusing on one leg first. Now I'm just like save the layout and stuff. So you want to play around with the graph editor as well. Why? Because you want to, graph editors is a great way to get into the details of your keyframe. So it's a lot easier, it's a lot more, just get more polished version. Now you can see I'm working on the in-between for the other leg, for the left leg. So the left leg is kind of like stepping through to the front. So you want to make sure that it has ample space, that it does not touch the floor because it's kind of like stepping. So it's taking its step over, then you want to have it looks okay. When you got that right, you want to do the same thing for the right leg for the next step. And you want to make sure that at the very end of this particular loop that the frame would look exactly the same with the first frame, so it would loop nicely, which means that when you start with the right leg in front, you better end with the right leg in front, so it will loop really nicely. I think that's my cat just stays there. Okay, now I'm working the animation from the front view because you already, when we start with the left view, you want to see it from the side. And then you want to make sure that the animation looks good from the front as well. And then you want to make sure if it looks good from other angles as well. Because it's a 3D game, so obviously we're going to see it from the back, most of them. So now you can see it's working its way. So basically I'm kind of not really done. At this point, you got the basic pose right for the legs. So I was just focusing on the legs. You notice that the top half I have not touched yet. I just got the pose. So now is basically when you got the legs right, then you work on the upper body. So the upper body is basically yes, I have my characters not swinging the hands, but you don't want it to look like a robot, just like not moving its hands. So you want to make sure that it has some swing to it. You want to make sure that your shoulders is kind of just a bit moving. Make sure that it's upright based on the keyframes, following the keyframes of the legs. I rarely do the top half and the lower half different keyframes. Usually you want to make sure that the keyframes, if you have the legs step on the floor at the frame 85, you want to make sure that the top half body has a keyframe at 85 as well, because you want to make sure that it's synced. It's a lot easier when you select all of your joints. It will look it's a lot more cleaner when you see it. So now we're gonna continue on with the hands and shoulders. Now you see that I play around with the head. So you want to make sure that the head still looks straight, because when you move the head, when you move the shoulder, when you move everything else, the head obviously follows. So you want to make sure that the head still looks at the front. Then you move on to the shoulders. So your shoulders has that just a bit. You don't want to make it swing too much because it's just a slight movement. In this case, just there is that glimpse of movement that you are still swinging like that, right? So in this case, so it's kind of like, see it. So now I'm going to focus on the other hand. You notice in this part, the speed is kind of just a bit slowed, like not like the before, because the previous one I sped it up way too much, because I think because that video is too long. So in this case, it's not as long, so you can speed it up not as much. So now we focus on the hands. We focus on the hands. We want to make sure that the pose is right. You want to focus on the, because Mixamo's rigging is very nice. You have like a bunch of joints for the body. You have the spine 1, spine 2, spine 3. And then, so you want to use some spines. You want to not touch on certain spines so you don't have too much data for too much keyframes in this case. So you want to focus, for me, I usually put the spine at the shoulders for rotating like so. For the bottom half of the spine, usually for rotating like that. I want to make sure I want to make it, keep it separate like that. But sometimes we don't really follow that particular rule. So now you see I'm focusing on the lower half of the body. You want to make sure that it has that jump, just that rotating up and down a bit because you are kind of like still running, but not too much. And it's a good way to see the keyframes in your graph editor, because in the graph editor you can edit more and you can kind of like adjust its can't really remember what's the word, but it's the flow of it. So it's not really abrupt, or you want to make it abrupt, it's up to you. Depends on the animation that you're going through. So in this case, I think it looks quite kind of done, mostly animation. That's kind of like what I want to see. So you can see here, that's basically the final, the close to final look of the animation. You have the legs, you have the hands, you have the head. Just at this point, I'm kind of like just just editing minor parts of the joints in the hands, just to get that look more satisfying for me. And then I'll be focusing on the sword after this, just a bit, just to the positioning of the sword and so on. I don't want it to. It looks like the sword was like left behind, so I want to put it like we're putting up it more forward so you can see more clearer. So basically there you have it. That's basically my running animation, and it loops perfectly. The speed, I'm not worrying about the speed because I'm going to adjust the speed in Unity anyways. And if you're wondering why, I think I mentioned why I didn't use IK handles, because Unity does not detect IK handles unless you're using a specific plugin, which I don't have. So I think there you have it for this running animation. If you have any questions or you have any comments on it, you can leave a comment below. And after this, I'm gonna do the attack animation, and hopefully that will be that. I hope this will be some kind of guide for any of you who are doing animation. So this is kind of very basic stuff. So join me next time for the attack animation, and I'll see you soon.